wild life.
Hello, welcome to the Wild Review. I'm the Wild Reviewer, and today we have another edition of Lost and Found. This is the series where we take a look at things that were lost and now we're finding them. Today we're going to take a look at a show that everyone wishes they could still forget, but they keep getting reminded about it sometimes. I'm pretty sure this is the biggest hint of what the show contains. Is Randy my puppet? Is this a hint? Is it? Well, if you couldn't tell, even if you can't read by the title, this is Crash and Bernstein. Crash and Bernstein. The one show that actually has a word in it that everybody wishes it did. Burn. That was a bad pun, I'm sorry. Crash and Bernstein aired on Disney XD along with other shows that I've talked about on this channel. Like Gravity Falls, Mighty Med, Lab Rats, yeah, they're all together in this one. It ran only for 2 seasons from 2012 all the way to 2014. Boy, did people not like this show. This was an example on why television wasn't that great around this time. A lot of shows that were good had been canceled and were being replaced by pieces of garbage. And in some people's eyes, Crash and Bernstein was the biggest piece of garbage on the Disney side of television. That may just sound like I'm trashing on this show, in which I am, but it's not because I hate the show, it's merely because I just never really got into the show. And this is coming from somebody that still watched Disney XD at the time. I watched everything at this point on Disney XD. I saw Kicking It, I saw Lab Rats and Mighty Med, obviously. I saw Gravity Falls, which I think was actually starting around that time. I saw Phineas and Ferb. I saw a bunch of stuff on Disney XD, and I gave this a try. And it seemed interesting, but it was one of those things where it looks cool, but once you actually have it in front of you, it's not that amazing. Crash and Bernstein focused on a young boy named Wyatt Bernstein, who lived with his mom and 3 sisters, Chloe, Amanda, and Jasmine. Seeing that he lives with nothing but girls, all Wyatt has ever wanted was a brother, and for his 12th birthday, his family brings him to Build-A-Bestie. Basically a knockoff from Build-A-Bear, but we can't use that name, can we? Unless we're sponsored by it. At Build-A-Bestie, he builds a puppet and names it Crash, who mysteriously comes to life. And because of this, Wyatt's wish on getting a brother comes true, as now Crash is here to stay and becomes Wyatt's new best friend and brother. Now, the main thing that caught my eye about this show was that this was the first Disney sitcom / puppet hybrid show I had ever seen, let alone the first children's sitcom / puppet show I had ever seen. That is if we're excluding The Muppet Show. Crash is both voiced and puppeteered by Tim Lagersey, who worked on Sesame Street and The Muppets. Now, the show only had about 39 episodes, and I can't lie, I did see every episode of Season 1. Some of the episodes that ultimately pop into my mind whenever I think of Crash and Bernstein is episodes such as the first episode, Crash Lands, where the whole show basically starts. Specifically the beginning of the episode where Crash is introduced to the family for the first time, but also the very dark and sick part of the episode where the whole family tries to get rid of Crash. Yeah, this episode kind of seemed very dark and even kind of mean in a boy's perspective of this. Wyatt is basically growing up in a female environment, and now he finally has a best friend. And yes, he's very violent and a puppet and odd, but Wyatt finally has a friend, and his sisters try to get rid of him in the first episode. You're a great family, aren't you? And then you have clever episodes like episode 10, Crash Crush, which focuses on Crash falling in love with another puppet from a birthday party. Episode 19, Comic Book Crash, focuses on Wyatt and Crash creating a comic book series, and eventually they turn it into a movie. And the movie aspect of it is especially what I remember of it, because that's where they go into a little fight, and you can obviously guess what happens after that. And the last episode that sticks out to me is the season 1 finale, Crash on the Run, which focuses on the company that made Crash putting out a notice saying that all their products are being recalled, which means Crash has to go back, and Wyatt's going to be given a normal, non-talking doll, which everyone is on board with except for Wyatt. So now he basically has to hide Crash so this way he doesn't get taken away. And that's literally all I remember from the first season of this show. Season 2 is a blur to me, mostly because I never really paid attention to it. I do remember the first episode, which focused on Crash getting a nose, which specifically sticks out in my head because I remember that was the episode where the fans of the show got to vote online what his nose would be. There's also an episode that's kind of shark-themed, mostly because Disney XD was doing this whole night of premieres that focused on sharks. They had all these shows that had some sort of shark involvement in their episodes. And then I saw the Christmas episode and their second Halloween episode, and that's kind of all I saw of season 2. After that, I got bored with the show because it was the same thing over and over again. It was the typical adventures of a human boy and his puppet brother wrecking and destroying stuff. Which kind of is what puts a damper on this whole entire show. Crash only had one motivation in the show: to break stuff. I mean, his name is Crash. Not to mention that at times he can be very obnoxious, annoying, and you never really get a serious moment with him at all. Wyatt was alright as a character, and so was the mom, but the sisters definitely also got on my nerves a little, mostly because of their hatred for Crash and how they wanted to destroy the only thing that made their brother happy. I mean, they clearly weren't making him happy, so how come he had to live in a household being miserable? That's not fair. Also, this is kind of a random fact, but I never knew that Wyatt had a father. Yeah, apparently his dad is a character in the show, but I wouldn't have known that because I stopped watching Crash and Bernstein. Apparently he's like a photographer. So with that all said, what went wrong with this show? Well, I could think of one thing. Alright, well, it wasn't exactly Crash. I just think the whole aspect of the whole entire show and the idea of it didn't sit very well with anyone. Not to mention, it didn't get a very good reception from parents. I didn't know this, but a lot of parents were very concerned about this show, seeing that it dealt with two brothers being very violent with each other and breaking things and vandalizing stuff, and parents were very concerned about that, which kind of makes sense. Parents always go on that little rampage of, we need to make sure our kids are watching decent stuff. I mean, the same thing kind of happened with Tom and Jerry, with that show being violent. Parents are just looking out for what kids are watching on TV, and Crash and Bernstein, in their eyes, seemed to be a very dangerous program because they were concerned that their kids may not know the difference between reality and fiction. Obviously, Crash and Bernstein ended in 2014, like I said. They didn't make a season 3, and apparently they were also supposed to do a spin-off of Crash and Bernstein called Commando Crash. The spin-off focused on Crash enrolling into military school, which would kind of make sense. However, because of the low ratings of Crash and Bernstein, the pilot was never picked up, and thus Crash and Bernstein and Crash alone was over. The only last memories I do have about Crash at all were the promos that would go up around Thanksgiving, as Disney XD would do their annual Pranksgiving, which focused on Crash pranking all the Disney XD celebrities. Obviously, they weren't real pranks, they were fake and set up, but you get the gist of it. So with that all said, it's safe to say Crash and Bernstein is something I guess people would like to say lost, because you don't hear anybody talking about it, and I don't think anybody wants to talk about it. It was alright. So that's my little talk about Crash and Bernstein. I personally think it was meh. It could have been a little better, I guess. Now I want to hear what you all think. Have you ever seen Crash and Bernstein? If so, what did you think of it? Did you think it deserved a little more, or do you think it deserves to stay dead? Also, what do you think the spin-off would have been like if they made it? Do you agree or disagree with anything that I said in this video? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching The Wild Review. I'm The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing. Hey, that was pretty cool. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure you give this video a like if you liked it. I probably shouldn't say that. I don't like saying that. Anyway, come back next week because I'm going to be talking about another show that is lost that I found. This show is actually pretty interesting, so you might want to come back and check it out. I don't know why it's lost. I don't even know why it got canceled. Just come back. It's very interesting. Wild like wildlife.